This is every single dragon level monster in One Punch Man. In the world of One Punch Man, monster appearances are becoming more frequent and much more disastrous with every passing day. Every recorded monster appearance has been categorized since the inception of the Hero Association based on the monster's potential danger to the public. This is called a disaster level. The disaster levels from the Hero Association go as follows: Wolf, Tiger, Demon, Dragon, and God. Just 10 or so years ago, monster appearances occurred only a handful of times per year, and when they did, it would usually be a weak Tiger level monster at the very worst. Well, nowadays it seems like Dragon level threats are the most common ones and are currently sending the One Punch Man world into complete chaos. Which makes sense, since Dragon level monsters are categorized as being capable of destroying entire cities on their own. While the lineup of Dragon level monsters that we've seen so far in the series is super diverse and filled with some truly broken characters, some of which you probably haven't even heard of or remember at all. So today I'll be explaining every single disaster level dragon that we've seen in the anime and the manga so far, and also rank them because, like you're about to see, not all dragons are built the same. Kicking off the list, we have the weakest disaster level dragon and honestly a fan favorite of the community, Grorybas. Grorybas is a weird entry in this list because he had a total of like 5 seconds of screen time in the anime and absolutely no feats whatsoever to his name. That being said, he's become a popular meme amongst One Punch Man fans because of this, so in actuality he's probably one of the more well-known monsters on this list. Even though he got smacked around by Saitama before he even got to show off any of his moves, bonus content in the manga actually revealed some of them. On his way to confront Saitama, Grorybas starts listing off some of the moves that he's going to use on him, including the Double Bite, Purgatory Thorn Grip, Sky Strangler Sunder, Screw Tail Thrust, and of course his Acid Breath that he said could melt anything. Well, I guess we're just gonna have to take his word for it because, you know, he's dead. So next up we have Kenzin Rat. Don't have to spend too much time on this one because it had even less screen time than Grorybas did. Kenzin Rat is an enormous rat monster that is capable of impaling entire skyscrapers with one of its many spikes, seemingly without any effort at all. The fact that it got taken out by Tatsumaki as collateral damage during her and Saitama's fight makes this monster seem much weaker than it actually is, and compared to the rest of the monsters on this list, it definitely is. But don't get it twisted, Tatsumaki is the second strongest hero in the entire S-Class, and destroying entire buildings without even trying is nothing to sneeze at. Well, now we move on from a giant rat to a tiny sprout, withered sprout that is. If you're not familiar with One Punch Man bonus chapters, there's probably a good chance that you haven't even heard of withered sprout before. It looks tiny and weak, but it's actually one of the more unique and menacing monsters I've seen in One Punch Man period. In the bonus chapter disaster level, we see withered sprout mislabeled as a wolf because of its tiny size and cowardliness. However, this turns out to be a ruse as it pulls a surprise attack on Smile Man and his brothers and is revealed to be in fact estimated at disaster level dragon. It has some pretty crazy ice conjuration powers that seem to have no limit in terms of how much ice it can generate at once. Seeing as how it's estimated to be dragon, it can likely freeze entire buildings and city blocks in an instant. And what really makes it a tricky monster is its aforementioned weak appearance that can easily fool any hero coming within range of its ice. However, all the ice in the world couldn't save it from an angry Saitama that was steaming after an ice attack from withered sprout made his potato all cold and inedible. I mean, if you mess with Saitama's food, your fate is sealed. Now that we're done talking about sprouts, let's talk about trees for a second. More specifically, the Forest King and his army of forest folk. The Forest King was a large and monstrous looking tree creature standing several stories high, with several thick branches covering his entire body that acted like its limbs. He only saw humans as fertilizer for his goal of returning the greenery to Earth at the cost of human existence. Even though anyone with like a lighter or some gasoline could easily handle his goons, a swift and large area flame explosion from Genos was necessary to take out the Forest King, considering he was several stories tall and can regenerate his lost limbs. But yeah, having fire as a weakness makes it to where he can't go any higher on this list in my opinion, so yeah, moving on. So now we move on from a tree to a rock, shaping up to be a, pretty interesting list so far, isn't it? The rock in question is actually the giant meteor that was gonna fall on Z City until Saitama blasted it to bits. The reason it's higher on this list than actual monsters is for the simple reason that its disaster level was not an estimation of how much destruction it could cause. It was a 100% certainty that it would have completely destroyed multiple cities, and there was literally no one other than Saitama, Blast, or maybe Tatsumaki that could have handled it. In most cases, the list of potential heroes that that could defeat a dragon level threat is a little bigger, so for that reason I had to put it above at least a few of the monsters on this list. Getting back to like actual monsters though, we have Bakuzan. Bakuzan was a feared and ruthless martial artist who was likely the strongest fighter in the Super Fight tournament other than Saitama and Suiryu. He was a user of the Dark Hell assassination art fighting style and was the only person to have ever been known to eat multiple monster cells at once and survive. He passed out for a bit, but eventually transformed into a giant monster with 4 arms and 3 tails. Goketsu was impressed with his transformation, and his brief rampage on Suiryu showed how potentially destructive he could have been. Coupled with the fact that he still maintained his human intelligence after transforming, made him a serious threat. Too bad for him, Saitama was there, so he didn't really get to do much. For these next 3 monsters, we finally start getting into some of the cadres from the Monster Association arc, and the first one to kick it off is Gums. I mean, Gums is as straightforward of a monster as you can get. He's pretty much a giant stomach with a set of teeth. It can eat anything it sees and was shown to have an even greater appetite than Pig God, who became a top S-class hero primarily for his ability to eat anything. So that in itself says a lot. It was also shown to be pretty durable since Bang turned it into like a straight up bagel in order to save Tank Top Master, and it still managed to continue fighting and eating. It can expand its size and muscles to consume and almost instantly digest anything, but its insatiable hunger wasn't enough to stop Fiora Ugly's crazy desire to become as nasty and disgusting as possible. Moving on, we get to none other than Carnage Kabuto. Carnage Kabuto was an artificial mutant created by Dr. Genus and the strongest creation of the House of Evolution. In his base form, he was shown to have genius level intellect, incredible strength and durability, and so much raw physical power that he was able to straight up deflect Genos' incineration cannon just by using his breath. He also seems to have keen animal instincts, since he could tell right away that a single hit from Saitama would kill him instantly, which instinctively made him retreat. His insane endurance was also alluded to when he enters his Carnage mode, which apparently allows him to go on a devastating rampage for almost an entire week without stopping, being capable of devastating multiple cities in the process. In his Carnage mode, all of his base abilities are enhanced tremendously, and it was even explained in a One Punch Man audiobook that he'd be strong enough to go toe to toe with rank 11 S-class hero Super Alloy Darkshine for 15 minutes before losing. Unfortunately, his one fatal mistake was picking a fight with Saitama the day that a deal at the supermarket was supposed to end. RIP. So getting back to the cadres, the next one on this list used to be a little fluffy cat, but is now a powerful, still probably pretty fluffy, dragon level threat, Neon. At first, Neon was just a regular house cat whose owner often forced her unwanted love onto him via kissing and hugging. I don't know about you, but that's gonna make me think twice the next time I decide to pick up my cat and give him a little kiss, because I know that my cat hates them. After transforming, Neon gains some seriously powerful abilities that complement his cat theme, and he uses a hit and flee fighting style that definitely reflects his cat-like nature. Cat owners, you know what I'm talking about. For starters, he has such impressive speed and reflexes that he managed to speed blitz multiple A, B, and C class heroes in the blink of an eye, and even stopped a knife by closing his eyelids. He also has a set of retractable claws that are strong enough to create shockwaves whenever he delivers a blow with them, also highlighting super impressive physical strength. Probably his most unique and overall powerful ability though is being able to contort his body to slip in and out of almost any surface. He stated himself that he could easily slip through any space larger than 3 freaking millimeters, which makes him nearly impossible to restrain. Like any sassy cat though, he easily overestimated his own abilities, which led to his downfall when he tried slipping into Drive Knight's body in order to destroy him from the inside, only to be straight up fried by his superheating ability. Now it's only fitting that just after talking about a cat, we now have to move on to a dog. Probably the goodest boy on this list, to be honest. That is of course Overgrown Rover. Unlike Neon, it isn't clear how Overgrown Rover became a monster, or if it was ever an ordinary dog to begin with. What we do know though is that Rover is one of the most durable monsters we've ever seen in the series, being able to withstand multiple blows from Garou and even a punch from Saitama. This alone would be enough proof to make him a truly powerful dragon level threat, but this isn't even his most impressive attributes. Although not a clever fighter like Neon, Rover makes up for this with raw power, being able to shoot energy blasts from his mouth so powerful that it instantly vaporized demon level monsters and could even cause massive earthquakes. His surprising agility for his size were put on full display when he chased and even overwhelmed Garou during their fight. Thankfully though, Rover didn't meet a grueling fate like many of the other monster cadres did, and he's currently enjoying a life life as Saitama's pet. Next up, we have the second of Boros' dark matter thief commanders, Melzargard. Yeah, there we go. Melzargard was a large alien with pale gray skin and blood red eyes. It had the ability to change the shape of its own body to extend and reshape its limbs. This is how he created like these massive hammers with his arms that he can shoot out at range, and unfortunately claimed the arm of our boy E-Iron. He also had multiple heads, each of which was able to separate and form its own body. Each head had a small marble-sized orb inside of it that allowed the body to regenerate around it. If broken though, the head dies. This was honestly his only weakness because his body was so durable otherwise that it could endure Atomic Samurai's most powerful slashes and regenerate instantly. He was also physically strong enough to fend off multiple S-class heroes at once, like Metal Bat, Bang, Atomic Samurai, and Puri Puri Prisoner. Too bad he had a pretty silly weakness though. Can't put him any higher on this list because of that. Next up, we have the ninja monster duo, Hellfire Flame and Gale Wind. Hellfire and Gale are from the 37th graduating class of the same ninja village that Flashy Flash is from. He and Gale joined the Monster Association sometime in the past to finally live life on their own terms and rule the world, as the ninja village that they were from stripped everyone of their identities. They're also both strong enough to be potential cadres of the Monster Association. After seeing their abilities in their monster forms though, it's pretty obvious that they were already stronger than some of the other cadres. When they transform, their already insane speed and reflexes get raised to a whole new level. So much so that they even went through an entire fight sequence against Flashy Flash as a bridge was falling to the ground, meaning they were traveling at supersonic speeds constantly. Flashy Flash himself even stated that if he didn't get to them first, their speed could have posed a very serious threat to the heroes on the surface. As a good comparison to show just how powerful they are compared to other heroes, in their base human form, they were already stronger than Speed of Sound Sonic, who in his own right was already a match for Genos at the time. This means that in their monster forms, they'd probably be able to hold their own against like half of the S-Class. They were taken out by Flashy Flash before they can get out of control though, but were eventually revived during Child Emperor and Phoenix Man's fight. It's pretty weird to think that deep into this list, we actually arrive at a monster that's technically just an ordinary guy with no physical abilities whatsoever. I'm of course talking about Homeless Emperor. He's a special case because he's the first character we've ever seen in the story who received his powers directly from God himself and not a monster cell. This distinction makes a massive difference since Homeless Emperor retained his human body and seemingly gained an endless supply of energy projection power. Before meeting God, he was a depressed average man who was fired from his job and had nothing going for him. This led to him making an attempt on his own life until God intervened and offered him power. These powers allowed him to draw from an endless well of energy in order to shoot highly destructive orbs at will. He was able to shoot them in a linear fashion if he wanted to, wherever he pointed his finger like a spirit gun or something, and make them larger in size, like a spirit bomb. He can even have them rain from the sky in an overwhelming barrage while also using them to block enemies' attacks. I think Homeless Emperor's character was definitely added to the story to show how insanely powerful an average human can become with even just a taste of God's power. Unfortunately, his normal body was a serious weakness as he couldn't shoot his blasts too close to himself without being badly injured, which Zombie Man took advantage of. Just before Homeless Emperor was going to spill the beans on God's power, God confiscated it and pretty much killed him right there and then. Next, we have probably one of the most memorable monster cadre from the Monster Association arc, Fuhrer Ugly. He was a truly unique and powerful character, as he was the first one to introduce us to the existence of Ugmon, which are monsters whose transformations were caused because of their incredible ugliness. The rage and humiliation caused from being so unsightly causes them to mutate into a monster, and with Fuhrer Ugly's case, made him stronger and stronger as the arc went on. He's also easily one of the most truly evil monsters, since he was the only one in the arc to have actually like straight up killed people when he turned into his vomited form. Before that though, he was shown to have devastating raw strength that was enough to brutally crush every bone in Tank Top Master's body, and even tear my mask in half. Once he was eaten by gums, he transformed into vomited Fuhrer Ugly, which gave his body an immunity to being cut, and his flesh was highly corrosive to the touch. Just one spitball or punch from him could melt regular human flesh easily, which is exactly what he did to the Council of Swordsmen. In fact, his acid was even strong enough to melt the skin off of Super Alloy Darkshine's body, and his skin is nearly impervious. He seemed to be nearly indestructible, but he's a freaking idiot, so he digested himself on accident after Garou turned him into a donut. So for our next dragon level monster, we actually actually have to go all the way back to episode 1 of the anime to the Attack on Titan ripoff monster, Marugori, or also known as Beefcake. Marugori was an aspiring bodybuilder that was obsessed with being the biggest and the strongest. He transformed into Beefcake after drinking a serum created by his mad scientist brother. This is easily one of the more massive characters that we've ever seen in the series before, said to be even 10 times the size of Monster King Orochi. His large muscular body means that he obviously has an insane level of physical power and is even strong enough to wipe out entire city blocks using just the wind pressure created from swinging his arms. In all honesty, to me, this is hands down one of the most impressive feats ever performed by a monster in the series, period. He didn't seem too bright though, because he accidentally killed his own brother by slapping the wrong shoulder when he was trying to kill Saitama. Although he was probably one of the most physically imposing monsters we've ever seen, he had one major weakness that many monsters on this list share, and that's Saitama. There's also an anime-only monster called Pluton that pops up at the very end of season 1, and it pretty much has the same gimmick as Beefcake, which is to be fucking huge, so I'll just go ahead and lump them together here. Our next cadre on this list is none other than Goketsu, who was the first ever winner of the Super Fight tournament as a human. This feat alone makes his strength on par or even higher than Suiryu, who is already S-class level, and that was just as a human. After being defeated and captured by monsters, he ended up ingesting monster cells, which caused him to become this massive humanoid monster that we saw in season 2 of the anime. Although he doesn't have any particular special abilities, his monster form allowed him to have immeasurable strength and speed. In fact, even with his massive building-sized body, he was still able to overwhelm Genos with speed and power. Being able to move that fast at the size that he is something that hadn't been seen before to that point. Along with that, he's able to take full advantage of his insane speed and size due to the fact that he still retained his sharp intellect and elite fighting ability. If it weren't for Saitama, I think all heroes not named Tatsumaki or Blast would have had a very hard time dealing with his out-of-world combination of size, speed, durability, and battle IQ. So at this point, we'll be talking about one more monster before we get to what I think is the absolute upper echelon of monsters, some of which you can even consider bordering god level threats. The final monster to close out this tier though is none other than the strongest commander of the Dark Matter Thieves, the octopus looking alien. Anyways, he was Boros' highest ranking officer, and for good reason. Although only shown off for a short time, he has some of the most impressive telekinetic abilities we've seen in the series ever. His psychokinesis can actually eliminate the friction between objects and air, which allows the rubble that he flings to fly at sub-light speeds. Normally they would just evaporate. Aside from this important detail, he was able to manipulate gravity as well. But again, he had one major weakness, Saitama. Alright, so from here on, we finally start dipping into what I consider is the next tier of super powerful dragon level threats. And like I said earlier, some of them are honestly much closer to god level than they are demon. The first of these is actually a grouping of two monsters, Elder Centipede and Sage Centipede. Sage Centipede is of course the larger of the two and much more powerful, but pretty much has the exact same abilities as Elder Centipede, so honestly I just didn't feel like explaining them separately. Watch season 2 if you want to know about Elder Centipede so bad. Sage Centipede is by far the largest monster that we've ever witnessed in the series, and it's not even close. Fully stretched out, it was shown to even reach the stratosphere of the earth, giving its 6,666 arms a pretty damn good reach in a fight. As with Elder Centipede, Sage can regenerate from almost any attack so long as his core stays intact. I think this minor weakness is what truly sets Sage Centipede apart from the monsters below him, because weighing that against how dense and durable his outer shell is, there's really only a handful of characters in the entire story that could come even close to defeating him. The reason that Sage is considered in the realm of approaching god level is due to its raw destructive potential. In mere minutes, it could level entire cities at once, and possibly the entire planet if left unchecked. So as we move deeper and deeper into the absolute strongest dragon level threats on this list, the order of these monsters is going to be more and more controversial, especially for you power scalers out there. So drop your top list in the comments below if you disagree with mine. And hey, maybe subscribe while you're at it, who knows? Get a little crazy. Really, this whole tier minus like the top 3, you can make a case for being higher or lower than they are. The next monster here is probably the most tricky to kill, since it's essentially just a sentient body of water. It has many forms, but today I'll be talking about it in its most powerful form, called Evil Ocean Water. It was created by Psychos on accident during one of her experiments. I think it's sometimes undersold just how crazy of a potential disaster this monster was, since it was taken out way too quickly by Saitama before it could really do anything. Don't get it twisted though, Evil Ocean Water is by far one of the most insanely powerful monsters we've ever seen. In theory, if it managed to merge with all of the Earth's oceans, it could have grown to a size that's larger than all of the land on the planet combined. Even in the form we witnessed in the manga, just his eyes were shown to be the size of aircraft carriers. And I didn't bother to look how big an aircraft carrier was, but I'm sure it's pretty goddamn big. Along with this, it can absorb any liquid it comes into contact with, so if it consumes enough oily materials, it could become almost impossible to freeze, which would be one of its bigger weaknesses. It also has some pretty wild reaction speed because it could sense Garou's hostility, which is how it perceives things and responds to them. It shot massive jet streams at the hero hunter in a span of 0.1 seconds. Its most powerful attack was the Ocean Grand Cannon, which shot thousands of gallons of water in a focused stream, which could even tear up solid ground. Even though it would be borderline unstoppable and an arguable god level threat if merged with all the oceans in the world, I don't want to rank too much on potential, and considering water can be frozen or evaporated, much more intelligent monsters that are above Evil Ocean Water on this list seem to have a much higher ceiling. Okay, so even though I literally just said I didn't want raw potential influencing the monsters on this list too much, I'm gonna look like a big ass hypocrite talking about this next monster. And honestly, I don't give a shit because I think Phoenix Man is by far one of the best and most underrated characters in all of One Punch Man. As a human, he was a part of a kids TV show where he played a character called Bird Brain and wore a giant bird costume. After being fired from the show, Phoenix Man grew depressed and resentful while never taking off his costume. This led to him fusing with his costume as part of his monster transformation and gained the ability to resurrect himself every time he dies and becomes more and more powerful every time he does so. He was quickly killed by Child Emperor in their first encounter, but then quickly resurrected into a humanoid bird form with some insane dragon level strength. If constant resurrection and growth wasn't broken enough, he has a whole grab bag of broken abilities that make him truly worthy of being one of the strongest characters in the series. First off, after his resurrection, Phoenix Man gained the ability to reanimate corpses. This ability affected all dead beings in the area, even if Phoenix Man was unaware of them. So in theory, he could resurrect a dead Orochi and make him one of his own zombies. Along with this, he has various bird forms like Penguin and Falcon mode that allow him to gain additional abilities on top of the ones he already has. This includes super speed, fire manipulation, ice manipulation, and enhanced physical strength. Lastly, dude can straight up create a domain expansion where he's capable of entering another dimension. This dimension is inside of his costume where he can mentally communicate with other costume wearing persons. He dubs this place the Phoenix Space, which is a strong reflection of his own psyche. The reason I have him on this list above other super strong dragons is because in theory he could become endlessly more powerful every time he's killed. His one weakness is removing his costume from his body, which takes away his powers, but most of the dragon level monsters below him on this list don't have the intelligence to figure this out and therefore wouldn't have the wherewithal to take him on one-on-one. It took a genius like Child Emperor to figure it out, and seeing as how Phoenix Man is highly intelligent himself, he wouldn't be easily tricked. Sure, he might be a little high on this list just based on his feats, but his insanely high potential makes him worthy of being here in my opinion, and this is my list, so I can do what I want. Kicking off the top 5 dragon level monsters, we have Vaccine Man. He was a monster that is said to have been born from the will of the earth itself to rid the planet of humans. If you forgot who this even is, I don't blame you because he only appeared at the very beginning of the first episode of the anime for a total of like 5 minutes, not even. In those few minutes though, he proved to be one of the most devastating monsters to ever appear in the series. In mere moments, he was able to destroy large portions of cities and did so seemingly without any effort, with his energy projection that's similar to Homeless Emperor. He also has incredible speed and reflexes since he's able to jump higher than skyscrapers to dish out his attacks. This is all before he transforms into his beefed up form, so it's likely that he was much stronger than he even showed. The The reason he's this high on this list is because the dude is straight up a Dragon Ball Z level final boss, and likely has endless reserves of energy projection like Homeless Emperor. This is because it was stated by Murata himself that their energy abilities are essentially the same. Had Saitama not shown up when he did, I have no doubt that you could probably count on one hand how many other characters in the series would be strong enough to take him out. Next up, we have another one of my personal favorite characters, and honestly a fan favorite for everybody. He's also one of the most inappropriately named monsters so far, and for some reason, if you haven't guessed who I'm talking about yet, it's Black S, or Black Sperm if you're feeling spicy. Black S has by far one of the most overpowered abilities in the entire series, especially with how versatile it can be. At full strength, he has the potential to split into 54 trillion different clones of himself. This alone could defeat almost any opponent with incredibly overwhelming numbers. This move actually has a specific name. It's called the Sperm Tsunami, and it can level entire sections of cities instantly. He can also manipulate his cells to create large, powerful limbs and regenerate from almost any damage that he takes. If he faces an especially strong opponent, he can fuse with his trillions of cells to create several singular forms. The first of which is Golden S, where his cells compress so much that his outer body takes on the properties of gold, which makes him impervious to acids and most other attacks. He gains this big bulky form, which gives him enhanced strength and still lets him retain his high level of intelligence while still having trillions of autonomous copies to control. His second form is called Platinum S, where he takes on a much slimmer form compared to his bodybuilder type physique with Golden S, and gains a shiny platinum outer body. This form allows him to move at unheard of speeds, exceeding even Flashy Flash. He was able to handle a triple threat match between Flashy Flash and Garou while they were moving large distances across the sky in fractions of a second. In fact, after Flashy Flash was taken out, he hung around for quite a while against Monster Fight Garou. In this form, he gains like a Majin Buu like tendril on his head that can knock out several S-class heroes instantly. Because of how impressively versatile his ability is and how difficult it makes him to kill, the added bonus of being a highly intelligent monster makes him a truly terrifying force to be reckoned with. Being the clever monster that he is, he's now hiding out as Saitama's pet. So entering the top 3, we actually have a combination of two dragon level threats, Psychos and Orochi. On their own, they wouldn't be this high on this list, but once they merged and possibly received some of God's power low-key, they became the towering disaster known as Sairochi by fans. Before I get into their Sairochi form though, I want to dive a little deep into their individual forms first. Psychos is a powerful Esper who was once a close friend of Fubuki. She's capable of performing traditional Esper abilities like telekinesis, gravity manipulation, telepathy, and can also shoot massive energy beams from her eyes. At a young age, she was obsessed with advancing Esper powers, which led her to research the existence of the Third Eye, which is an ability that an Esper can awaken that allows them to see into the future. One night when she was trying to sleep, she suffered from agonizing headaches before suddenly unlocking the Third Eye ability. After this, she saw something so terrifying and life-altering that she ended up going borderline insane and made it her life's mission to eliminate the human race completely. After being rejected by Fubuki and their psychic club for her extreme plans, she formed the Monster Association and assumed a body double called Giro. During her time in the Monster Association, she experimented on various life forms with the goal of creating the most powerful monsters possible. At some point, she accidentally created evil natural water during one of her many experiments, and along the way, she also discovered Monster King Orochi when he was still a human. She saw great potential in him and put him through the grueling process of experiencing near death over and over again. This made him stronger and stronger each time. Soon enough, he became what we would eventually see in the anime and the manga. Little is known about Orochi's past, but it was revealed that during his fight with Garou, he too was a fighting genius that could copy abilities with a single glance. He was viewed as the strongest monster alive by Goketsu and Psychos, and even made Metal Knight admit that he would rather not cross paths with him. His towering body has a surprising level of speed and reflexes, as he was able to use his extendable horns to straight up impale Metal Knight's robot before he could even self-destruct. His body appears to be made of intertwined dragons that each can shoot massive blasts of energy and even individually use fighting styles, like when they all overwhelmed Garou at once with his own fighting technique. In his true form, he resembles some kind of crawfish demon, and during his fight with Saitama was even able to siphon off energy from the Earth's freaking core itself. This allowed him to perform the Gaia Cannon. After being taken out by the Sirius squirt gun from Saitama, he took on this gelatinous blob form that tried tried absorbing everything around it. This eventually led him to find Psychos as she was being overwhelmed by Tatsumaki's superior Esper powers. In that moment, he attempted to absorb Psychos, but she managed to retain her own consciousness, and with some implied help from God, they became the behemoth that was known as Sairochi. In this new massive form, they coexisted inside the same body and grew to a size more massive than any skyscraper by a very large margin. This new form allowed them to have a humanoid Psychos body at the top, but also a more Orochi-like lower half with the same energy blasting dragons that he had on his old body. The energy beam that Sairochi could produce was enough to completely separate a very large portion of the Earth's crust. Like, looking at this panel, it looks like a whole freaking continent could fit on it. Not only did they have a massive form that towered above ground, Sairochi was also like a tree in the sense that it was able to spread roots throughout the ground, and these roots could absorb anything wherever they spread. This led them to pursue the ultimate goal of assimilating the entire planet with their roots and become a single consciousness, along with dramatically increasing their psychic abilities to a much higher level than Psychos ever could alone. They could also transform into random things like a fighter jet if they feel like it. You know, since I first read the manga, I always thought it was kind of weird and convoluted that they could do something like that, but you know, whatever. Most people just focus on the fact that Sairochi was essentially a 1,000-foot tall waifu. I mean, imagine seeing that staring out the window in the morning. They were defeated with a collective effort from many S-class heroes, and seeing as how Orochi is officially dead, I don't see this form popping up ever again. Psychos is currently somewhere hiding out with Fubuki, so it's yet to be seen exactly what role she has in the manga going forward. So now we move on to the two absolute strongest dragon level threats that we've ever seen in the series before, both of which are capable of vaporizing the entire planet and are arguably even strong enough to be considered god level. The first of which held the mantle of being the strongest villain to ever be in One Punch Man for damn near the entire series. I'm of course referring to the space pirate himself, Lord Boros. Boros was a leader of the Dark Matter Thieves, a group of alien invaders with some of their commanders actually being on this list. It's been a long video, so you know, it's okay if you don't remember. Like Saitama, Boros faced a self-imposed existential crisis, having become so powerful that no battle thrilled him anymore. His travels across the entire universe in search of a worthy opponent eventually led him to Earth, where he faced off against our favorite bald superhero at the end of season 1 of the anime. According to Boros, his species developed the greatest regenerative ability in the entire universe. In order to adapt to the harsh living conditions of his home planet, Boros was gifted with superpowers from birth. He claimed that he in particular possessed regeneration, physical prowess, and latent energy that far surpassed all other members of his race. Boros also appeared to be able to sense people's energy, which manifested itself as an aura around said person. He was the very first on-screen opponent that survived a normal punch from Saitama. Destroying his armor actually unlocks Boros' latent abilities and introduced his second insanely powerful form. During the beginning of his fight with Saitama, he was able to knock him through several pillars of his ship with only a single punch. He was also capable of busting through the outer hull of his own spaceship, the same hull that was durable enough to even withstand the immense impact caused by Saitama leaping on it all the way from the moon. And this jump created a massive crater on the moon itself. How's that for power scaling? All in all, Boros was shown to be amazingly resilient. Even after receiving several consecutive normal punches from Saitama, he was completely blown to bits but still was able to reform his body. He used his latent energy as a form of propulsion, making him incredibly fast. While battling inside the giant spaceship, Boros and Saitama were moving so fast that the normal human eye wouldn't be able to follow their movements. I mean, just watching the scene in the anime where Boros is just punching and throwing Saitama all over the place is the best example of how undeniably fast he was. Boros could also use his latent energy that his body produces to shoot off massive energy blasts from the eye in his chest. These energy attacks have a huge area of effect, and by combining his energy projection into a single attack, just the shockwaves from these blasts were capable of destroying city-sized areas. His physical strength doesn't need any more explaining in my opinion. I mean, the dude straight up kicked Saitama to the fucking moon. I mean, come on. What else is there to say? What sets him apart apart from any other monster on this list though, is his otherworldly regeneration and the potential to destroy the entire planet with a single attack. This attack of course being the collapsing star roaring cannon. It took a serious punch from Saitama to finally put Boros down for good, and after this fight it would be another 130 freaking chapters until we finally witnessed another villain that could rival his strength, and that's gonna be our #1 strongest ever dragon level threat. We finally made it, guys, the absolute ultimate 100% money back guaranteed strongest dragon level threat this series has ever seen. Crablante. I'm just kidding, it's Garou. Sorry for wasting 30 seconds of your life on that gag, but I just couldn't help myself. Most of you are probably wondering right now, wait, doesn't your thumbnail specifically imply that Cosmic Fear Garou is not the strongest dragon in the series? Well, yeah, and technically I wasn't lying though. I firmly believe that Cosmic Fear Garou undoubtedly became a god level threat by the end of his fight with Saitama, and you cannot change my mind on that. Even before leveling up by copying Saitama with his Saitama mode, Garou was already capable of going blow for blow with #1 hero Blast, and even overwhelmed him at certain points. Just his mere presence caused the earth to slowly become too radioactive for life to exist due to his cosmic energy. He straight up killed the entire S-Class just by standing there. So in his totally epic fight with Saitama on Jupiter's moon Io, as he was adapting and continuously leveling up to adapt to Saitama's infinite strength, he easily reached a level that far surpasses any dragon level threat a million times over. The dude was literally able to use gamma ray bursts and manipulate space and time at will. I mean, come on. So a much more fair placement on this list is actually monsterized Garou and not Cosmic Fear mode. From a very young age, Garou was constantly bullied. A part of this was because he would root for the villain of his favorite kid's TV show, while the other kids would obviously root for the hero. This caused him to be seen as an outcast and began his resentment towards heroes, since his bullies would label him as the villain and label themselves as heroes when they'd be playing around, giving them an excuse to beat on Garou. Eventually he stumbled across Bang's dojo as an aimless and abandoned kid. Eventually he quickly proved himself to be a fighting prodigy. He became the strongest martial artist at his dojo, but one day he finally snapped and was expelled for beating up his entire dojo class. This began his journey as the infamous hero hunter, with most of his journey being followed by season 2 of the anime. In pursuing his goal to be the absolute evil, Garou leveled up time and time again to match the strength of his opponents. This allowed him to run the gauntlet of S-Class heroes, including Tank Top Master, Puri Puri Prisoner, and Super Alloy Darkshine, increasing his power every time and drawing him closer and closer to his eventual monster transformation. I mean, he also did get wrecked by Watchdog Man at some point in between all that, but you know, we're not going to talk about that here. He also had epic fights with monsters like Royal Ripper, Monster King Orochi, and Overgrown Rover along the way. After his fight with Darkshine though, Garou's claims of being a monster finally became a reality, as he transformed underground and climbed to the surface as a mindless beast. He then went on to defeat Bomb, and even proved to be too much for his own master Bang. Although a monster, Garou's humanity hadn't fully disappeared, as a punch from Bang knocked him to his senses. This led Garou to perform one of the most impressive feats of the entire series after he speed blitzes Vomited Fury Ugly, Evil Natural Ocean, Platinum S, and Sage Centipede. Like 4 of the most insanely powerful dragon level threats that we've ever seen, just quickly getting slapped around by Garou. He achieved his perfected technique, the Godslayer Fist, after chopping Sage Centipede right down the middle all the way from space. He also showed off his unbeatable speed against Flashy Flash and Platinum S, where they had an all-out fight where they delivered multiple blows to each other in fractions of a second. And with that, he managed to put both of them down with relative ease. And it wasn't until his fight with Saitama that he started leveling up to a point where he actually rivaled the power of Boros. As he continued to transform deeper and deeper into a monster, he eventually took on a gargoyle-like form mid-fight against Saitama. In this new form, he gained the ability to fly, gained a second set of arms, and also gained energy projection abilities. He combined all of these things to shoot Saitama so hard into the earth that it straight up bulged the other side of the planet. Just the impact from his blow deformed the entire planet Earth through the crust. Pretty damn impressive. He also showed off his innate hero abilities by saving various crowds of people unintentionally as he was attacking Saitama. Although his powers weren't as flashy as Boros's, he makes up for this with raw strength and battle IQ. The creator of One Punch Man 1 even pointed out himself that in a one-on-one fight with Boros, he'd have the upper hand in close combat. Mind you, this was all before Cosmic Fear Garou was even a concept. Couple this with his iron will and godlike ability to adapt and match his opponent with every fight, this gives me absolutely no doubt that Garou would be able to handle Boros even without reaching his Cosmic Fear mode. So there's my list. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you liked it. Let me know what you thought in the comments. I originally was going to have like a nice little outro for this entire long video, but I just spent hours recording this, so I'm just going to, say goodbye. See you guys later.